This is the first prelude to the Vietnam War series and will focus on Vietnam's early history up till the colonization of Indochina by the European powers in the 19th century. Vietnam has a rich history spanning thousands of years going as far back as the 3rd century BCE. Thanks to its strategic location and extremely fertile land, it has been home to many civilizations and has been conquered many times as well. Thus, the major pieces that would lead to the Vietnam War were already set even before the country was even born or any of the major players ever existed. Historically, Vietnam has been in competition with China, as the Vietnamese feared their larger neighbors. By the 2nd century BCE. Vietnam had been conquered by the Chinese and would be under Chinese domination for an entire millennia. During Chinese rule, there were many rebellions, and the region was treated as just another part of China. As the parts along the coast link China with India, in some ways, Vietnam is kind of like the Afghanistan of the region in that a foreign power has never really been able to totally subjugate it, and that's sadly a lesson that the Americans failed to learn centuries later. As is common in Vietnamese history, the Vietnam resisted Chinese rule and uprisings were common. By the 10th century CE, the Tang dynasty had collapsed and Vietnam got its independence again. During the next 3 centuries, the Vietnamese would fight, expand, and repel a host of invaders, and the Chinese again. Boy, the Chinese just don't give up, don't they? Uh, this other guys included the Khmer and the Chang. Not sure if I'm saying them right. Anyways, during the chaotic days of the Mongol Empire, they were one of the few civilizations to withstand the Mongol hordes. Can you imagine that? By the 15th century, Vietnam would come once again under Chinese domination. Things would be even more brutal this time, as the Chinese would impose heavy taxes, but they were kicked out again. The next 2 centuries would see the arrival of the Europeans like the Portuguese, who set up trading outposts, and the establishment of the Catholic Church in Vietnam, which would be a major influence on the country. The church, by the by this time, Vietnam wasn't really a unified state, but was sort of like a collection of states in the region. In 1847, the French would arrive, and funny story here. Hey, guess how things are gonna play out? Uh, they tried to take over, and the same thing that happened to the Chinese kind of happened to them. Anyways, by 1872, the French had control of Indochina that included modern-day Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. So these 3 countries would witness some of the bloodiest and most horrific events that ever occurred in the 20th century. This is where we will stop here. In the next Prelude special, we will cover up till World War II and get a better idea about the events that led to the conflict itself. I could have made this video an hour long, but I wanted to give you guys a brief overview of the abstract events that led to the Vietnam War itself. I mean, we've seen this in the video as I explained countless times. Some foreign power invading the regions. Oh, they win the military fight, but then they just get worn down because people just don't like foreigners. So this just speaks to volumes to the strength of the Vietnamese people, and it just goes on like that. The Vietnamese people, for all the hardships they encountered, are strong and proud people. When doing the special, I didn't really know about the Mongol invasions. Imagine that, being one of the few civilizations to resist the Mongols. I mean, the Mongol Empire, at the height of its power, stretched all the way from like Poland and Hungary to Vietnam. Can you imagine how large that is? And imagine being one of the few people to actually stand up. That takes balls. So that's where I'll stop here. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and as always, please subscribe for more awesome content. Thank you.